Hey everyone, I'm Lamar, your host here on Hip Hop Vibes, and I'm thrilled to welcome our special guest today, N.W.A.
We're so glad to have you back. And if this is your first time here, welcome to our hip-hop family.
Today we're breaking down the 10 most influential songs of the golden age of hip-hop.
We've got stories about how these classics were made, the legends behind them, some surprising fun facts, and yes, even a few of our friendly disagreements.
An era that shaped not only music, but the culture around it. Because let's be real, without debates, hip-hop wouldn't be hip-hop.
But before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss out on the next chapter of the culture.
All right, let's get it. Time to dive straight into the golden age. We have to start with Run-D.M.C and Aerosmith. Walk This Way. That was the moment when hip-hop broke into the mainstream. The first big crossover with rock music.
Absolutely, and what's amazing is that this collaboration wasn't even planned to change the world. Rick Rubin just wanted to remake an old rock classic. But the result? An MTV explosion. The first hip-hop track in the top 10 of the US charts. And suddenly, rappers became global stars.
And what's interesting is that Aerosmith were already in decline at that time. This song literally revived their career, while it launched hip-hop onto a new stage.
Exactly. And the most powerful moment of the video is when Run-D.M.C break through the wall that separates them from Aerosmith. That wall wasn't just between two rooms. It symbolized breaking down the barriers between rock and hip-hop.
And while they're breaking the wall, Steven Tyler is getting ready to scream. That was the chemistry that exploded. And when Run-D.M.C opened those doors, all it took was for someone to step in who would change the very essence of rap. And that someone was Rakim.
Thinking of a master plan. This ain't nothing but sweat inside my hand.
Wow. Paid in full. Rakim didn't just rap, he elevated it. His flow, his lyrics, his calm presence. It was like poetry with a heartbeat.
Rakim changed everything. Before him, rap was simpler. Then he came along with rhymes that sounded like they were written in sacred books.
Exactly. They say Rakim used to write his rhymes while riding the bus, drawing inspiration from jazz improvisation. You can hear that. It's got rhythm, but also freedom.
Right, and the production. Eric B took a sample of Don't Look Any Further and turned it into something completely new.
Yeah, and the message? That hip-hop isn't for sale. It's real. It carries dignity, pride, and depth.
Come on, you're taking it way too philosophically. I just wanted to look cool while nodding my head to the beat.
Well, see? That's why you were just nodding your head. And Rakim was writing history.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? He made silence sound powerful. Nobody else could make calm feel that cool.
Yeah, maybe that's why his rhymes sound so clean and precise.
And while Rakim was lifting rap to a spiritual level, on the West Coast, something explosive was brewing. For our third track, N.W.A came through. No censorship.
Straight Outta Compton, raw, unfiltered, and fearless. They spoke the truth that no one else dared.
Man, N.W.A completely changed the game with the song Straight Outta Compton. Raw reality, no filters. They literally said what no one else dared even imagine.
Exactly. And the police tried to shut them down, sending warning letters, and some radio stations just refused to play their hits.
Right? And you know what that did? It only made them bigger. Kids wanted to hear what was forbidden, like getting a peek into real life in Compton.
Oh, wow, totally. The message was crystal clear. This is our life, violence, poverty, police oppression. Take it or leave it.
Exactly. And just like that, they helped bring gangster rap into the spotlight, giving a voice to the streets that had long been ignored.
Ha! Just don't try to be a gangster yourself, okay? Not sure the office chair suits that vibe.
Okay. I'll leave the gangster attitude to N.W.A.
Good. I like you better as the chill historian of hip-hop, not a wannabe gangster. But you know what? What about the women? They were also out there, shaping hip-hop in their own way.
You're absolutely right. We already talked about that in our golden age. Part 2 episode where we highlighted the female MCs. But since you mentioned them, let's give them their moment right now.
For example, Queen Latifah was already bringing messages of self-respect and equality back in 1988. Her track, Ladies First, made it clear women deserve a voice and their place in hip-hop.
Absolutely. While N.W.A. were shouting the brutal reality from the streets, Queen Latifah and Yo-Yo brought strength and confidence. Around the late 80s, Yo-Yo was already preparing her first feminist messages on the West Coast.
That's such a great contrast. On one side, raw gangsta rap. On the other, powerful female MCs showing their individuality and pride.
And that just shows how diverse hip-hop really is. Every voice, male or female, plays its part.
Exactly. And while everyone was fighting for their message, another group decided to take a completely different route, one that felt like a breath of fresh air.
You must be talking about De La Soul.
Of course. Their Me, Myself, and I from 1989, that was pure creativity and positivity in a sea of hardcore beats.
Yeah, while everything around was hard and dark, De La Soul came in with Me, Myself, and I, full of flowers, colors, and humor. It was like they opened a window and let fresh air into hip-hop.
Right. They refused to follow stereotypes. They didn't want to copy anyone. This song showed that you could be completely yourself, even if people looked at you funny.
Sure. Me, Myself, and I was their response to critics who mocked them for their so-called hippie image. Instead of fighting back, they turned that mockery into a hit.
Exactly. And that's why it's called Me, Myself, and I. They didn't care about what others thought. The message was clear. Individuality matters more than labels.
You know, this track always reminded me of a hip-hop birthday party. Colorful, cheerful, and totally different from everything else out there.
Right. And to me, it's proof that hip-hop is freedom. Everyone deserves their own style, their own voice, their own story.
At the same time, in that same period, Salt and Pepper were dominating the scene with their party hit, Push It, 1989. They had energy, humor, and attitude, sending the message that women could dominate while being fun and smart.
Exactly. Their track Push It was a perfect example. Catchy, empowering, and full of personality. They were showing that female MCs had a place at the top of hip-hop charts.
Right. So while De La Soul brought experimentation and color, Salt and Pepper gave a strong voice to women. A perfect combination of style, attitude, and charisma. And speaking of stories, up next is the man who told the most famous hip-hop fairy tale of all time, Slick Rick. Now, a real fairy tale, but a hip-hop fairy tale. Slick Rick and his children's story from '88.
Right. Except this fairy tale isn't for bedtime. It's for thinking. The story of a young guy who went down the wrong path and ended tragically.
Sure. This was storytelling at its purest. Rapping that sounds like someone is telling you a story, with a voice full of humor and drama.
You know, and that British charisma, plus the eye patch, you immediately knew Slick Rick was something special.
Exactly. And the best part? People were dancing to it, even though the story was serious. That's the magic. A beat that makes you move, and lyrics that make you think.
Right. So a fairy tale with a lesson, only instead of a prince and princess, it's a gun and street life.
Sure. And at the same time, MC Lyte was making waves with her hit Paper Thin. Strong, confident, and sharp. While Rick told his story, she showed that female MCs could dominate with skill and attitude.
Exactly. MC Lyte had that calm but powerful delivery. She didn't need to shout to prove herself. Paper Thin was her way of saying, I'm here, I'm confident, and I've got bars. She brought intelligence and elegance into the game.
Right. That's the magic of hip-hop. Serious stories and fun go hand in hand. And if Slick Rick was telling a fairy tale, Public Enemy wrote the whole book of rebellion. Spike Lee asked them to create a song for his film Do the Right Thing, And what came out was nothing less than an anthem of resistance.
Right. Chuck D said that they wanted to make music that moves people, not just to dance, but to stand up and fight.
Sure. The Bomb Squad built a real wall of sound. Layers of samples, sirens, political speeches, pure chaos that somehow turned into rhythm. It sounded like an urban rebellion turned into music.
You know, and I remember the controversy when they said Elvis was a symbol of white musical dominance. That caused quite a stir.
Exactly. But that's what hip-hop is all about. Saying what others are afraid to say.
Just don't start rapping in Chuck D's voice now.
Come on, y'all. Fight the power.
Oh, stop. Please, leave that to Chuck.
Okay. At the same time, Roxanne Shante was representing the female side of the revolution. With tracks like Roxanne's Revenge, she proved that women could battle just as hard as any man. Clever, fearless, and raw. And while Public Enemy were firing up the crowds, a young man from Queens got inspired by his grandmother, LL Cool J.
Exactly. Roxanne didn't hold back. Clever lines, strong delivery, and that fearless energy. She was proof that hip-hop wasn't only a man's game.
Now this one's a knockout. Literally. When people said LL Cool J was finished, that he was too old for the new era, he came back with Mama Said Knock You Out.
Exactly. That was his ultimate comeback. Pure power, anger, and confidence. LL showed everyone he still had that spark.
And you know what's crazy? The song was inspired by his grandma. She told him, "Don't you quit, just show them." That's all it took. One sentence, one hit.
See? Always listen to Grandma. If only you'd listen to me like that.
Well, LL listened to his grandma and made a classic. Maybe I should take notes. And while LL was turning the heat back up, Yo-Yo came in strong from the West Coast with You Can't Play With My Yo-Yo. She was bold, clever, and fearless, bringing that same punch, just from the female side.
Right. Her track had that mix of fun and fire, a message that women run the game too. LL was knocking people out and Yo-Yo was saying, "Don't mess with me." Balance restored.
After that knockout came a smoother groove, and a call for unity from a tribe called Quest.
Yeah, that question became an anthem. Can I Kick It? Wasn't just a song.
Right. A tribe called Quest with Can I Kick It? They brought jazz into hip-hop and opened the door to a completely new sound. Laid back, clever, and fun.
Exactly. Sampling Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side, chill vibe, and a message of unity. Can I kick it? Yes, you can. Even today, it's a call for collectivity, a song that brings people together.
Yeah, it was like hip-hop took a deep breath. No anger, no rush, just pure creativity. You could feel the freedom in every verse, like they weren't trying to impress anyone, just express themselves. That's what made it timeless. It wasn't about ego or competition, it was about art and feeling.
Totally agree. It was the sound of harmony. Hip-hop showing it could be smooth, poetic, and full of meaning. Every rhyme felt like a conversation, every beat like a heartbeat. It proved that hip-hop wasn't just about power and rhythm, it was about soul, connection, and emotion too.
Sure, and while Tribe was spreading positivity and intellectual charm through rap, Salt and Pepper were doing the same on the female side. Their hit, Expression from 1990 was all about freedom. Say what you feel, be who you are.
Right. Salt and Pepper showed that confidence and authenticity are just as powerful as any beat. They brought fun, energy, and a message of self-expression for women everywhere.
Exactly. So while Tribe talked about unity, Salt and Pepper reminded everyone that real power starts with being yourself. Perfect balance, right?
Sure. Hip-hop is space for both the collective and the personal voice.
And then came a 9-member army, the Wu-Tang Clan. This is the moment when the East Coast set the tone again. Wu-Tang Clan and their cream. Cash rules everything around me. It wasn't just a hook. It was a survival philosophy for the 90s.
Exactly. With RZA on the boards, the beat is minimalist, cold, and dark, perfectly framing raw stories from real life. Each member brings their own style, their own experience, and together they sound like the streets turned into a symphony.
But behind that, there was also a lot of struggle. The fight to survive, the fight for a better life.
Sure. And interestingly, the song became popular even among people who didn't live that reality.
And even today, when you hear that piano, you instantly know what it's about.
And you immediately think of your wallet.
Well, what can I do? Cash rules everything, right?
And in the same year, Queen Latifah continued releasing songs that carried messages of equality and respect. Parallel to the male MCs, female artists were shaping and complementing the story in hip-hop.
Exactly. And to finish this segment, we can't forget a female anthem. Queen Latifah's Unity from 1993. Powerful, bold, and a reminder that hip-hop gives a voice to everyone. And speaking of voices that define New York, there was another one, quieter but sharper. Nas. When he dropped New York State of Mind, it wasn't just a song. It was like opening a window into the city's soul.
You're right. There's a raw honesty in this track. Gritty, poetic, and real. That track captured New York like no one ever had before.
Let's head straight there, to Queensbridge, to the raw sound of Illmatic. This is New York State of Mind.
Life is defined, I think of crime when I'm in a New York state of mind.
And finally, Nas, New York State of Mind, one of the strongest lyrical tracks of the golden age of hip-hop.
Sure, Nas was only 20 when he recorded this, but he sounded like he carried the weight of an entire generation. His story of life in Queensbridge was so detailed and real that you could see every hallway, every shadow, every danger.
Right. DJ Premier's beat is dark and minimalist, the perfect backdrop for Nas' words and his storytelling. This wasn't just rap, it was literature, poetry in motion.
Exactly. The song became a symbol of street reality, but also proof that hip-hop could be high art, as valuable as a novel or a film.
Sure, and that's why N.W.A. State of Mind continues the golden age while introducing a new dimension, more serious, introspective, and uncompromising.
Right. All that from a kid who had just stepped into the studio. It was the announcement that a new king of lyricism had arrived.
Exactly. And on the female side that same year, Da Brat was making history with Funk Da Feed. Her confident flow and playful attitude proved that women could top the charts while keeping that real hip-hop energy.
Sure. So while Nas was painting the raw picture of the streets, Da Brat was showing that hip-hop leaves no room for limits. Every voice matters, male or female.
Right. And that's the beauty of hip-hop. Everyone has space to tell their story, express emotion, attitude, and creativity.
Exactly. From Run-D.M.C. to Nas, and from Queen Latifah to Da Brat. The golden age wasn't just about beats and rhymes. It was about growth, diversity, and the power of voices that built a culture together.
Every artist from that era left something behind, a sound, a message, a feeling that still echoes today. It was more than entertainment. It was education, empowerment, and raw emotion.
Exactly. Those songs taught us pride, resilience, and honesty. They showed that hip-hop could be political, poetic, and personal all at once. Something that spoke to every corner of the world.
And when we listen to them now, we don't just hear music. We hear stories of people fighting for recognition, dignity, and a better life. That's what makes it timeless.
That's the beauty of it. The way those records captured both struggle and joy, turning pain into rhythm and chaos into art. No other genre has ever done it quite like that.
And even decades later, the influence is still alive. In every new beat, every freestyle, every young MC chasing their dream.
Exactly. The golden age gave us the blueprint. The future generations just keep adding new verses to the same story.
Right. And as long as that story keeps evolving, hip-hop will never die. It'll just keep finding new ways to inspire, connect, and move us.
That's what makes it eternal. The rhythm might change, but the message stays the same. Truth, unity, and love for the culture.
So, what's next for us? Which stories and videos are coming up in the next chapters of hip-hop history?
Next time, we're diving deeper into the 90s. The rise of East Coast versus West Coast. The sound of rivalry, innovation, and evolution.
This is going to be interesting. From Biggie to Tupac, from New York to LA, the next chapter seems raw, emotional, and unforgettable.
That's right. Stay tuned for more. This was Hip Hop Vibes, a tribute to the Golden Age. Stay real, stay inspired, and keep the beat alive.
And don't forget, the story continues.
Hip Hop Vibes.